We used to go to the Greystone Ballroom, my girlfriends and I. There were always at least three of us, maybe four of us girls. They all went together. It was me and Juanita and, what was that other girl's name? I can't remember her name, Jeanette. And then there was a fourth girl, Evelyn. So we used to go together. And Wednesday was a popular day. I don't know why. I think maybe because girls got in at half price or something like that, which means that we only had to pay about 15 cents to get into the dance hall. And people went to dance halls to meet other people. That's the way it was. It was very nice. And I remember when I think it was a Wednesday evening, and I was standing there talking to my friends, and there was a group of boys not too far away, and I noticed the man that became Joe Wujcik in my mind. I noticed how handsome he was, and he looked nicer than the other boys, and he was dressed sharply and clean and all that sort of thing. And I thought, I wonder if he would talk to me if I went up to him. I remember thinking that, will he talk to me? And so at one point, a couple of the boys turned around. One of the boys worked for the Wayne State University bookstore, and I was familiar with him because I had started taking a course at Wayne, and I went in the bookstore to buy my book. And so when I saw the boys standing together, this boy was among them, and so that was my entree into the group. So I looked up that way and I said hi to him, and I can't remember his name now. And he got real excited. He invited me to come over and introduced me to the other boys. And so when Juanita came back looking for me, I called her over, and we had a nice conversation going with boys and girls. And I thought that Joe sounded so smart and seemed so nice looking and everything. And he asked me if I came there often, and I told him, yeah. I said, I come here on Wednesdays, and on Fridays I go to the Grandy on Grand River. And he never showed up at the Grandy, but he was there the next Wednesday. And
what year was it?
1947,
Okay.
June 27th, 1947. I always remember that date. And so then he asked me where I lived, because we didn't have telephones in those days yet. We didn't get our telephone until about 3 or 4 months later after that. But as soon as we got our telephone, I gave him my phone number. And that first date, he came over and he met my mother and my sister Mary. At that time, my sister Camille was still living in New York or Philadelphia, wherever she was in the East. But anyway, Mary was so excited about meeting him. She ran out and told all her girlfriends to come and stand by the front door because he was going to be leaving, and she wanted her girlfriends to see what he looked like. She was more excited about him than I was. But anyway, then he asked me to go to a movie, and then he asked me out to dinner. And from then on, sometimes we went to dinner and sometimes we went to a movie.
And you didn't go back to the ballrooms?
No, I never saw him back there again. I think I must have gone back there because my girlfriends always wanted to go, so I went with them.
When you went to the ballrooms, when you met him, did you dance with him at the ballroom?
Yes. And I don't know if it was the first time or the second time, because I saw him a second time there. And that's when I gave him my address so he could come over. But we did dance together, yes. And I think he was dancing steps that he knew to music that he knew, because he really didn't have much confidence about his dancing, I found out later on.
Do you remember the music?
Yeah, it was all the popular songs in 1947. My gosh, I hear them now, and uh, they're like old standards. But those same songs were popular starting in the 1920s. I mean, they keep playing them now because they're classics. Very nice. But anyway, he started calling me about once every 2 weeks. And I'd always get to the point where I'm thinking, oh, he hasn't called for 2 weeks. And sure enough, the next night he'd call. That's when we finally got our telephone.
And at that point, he was going to U of D
Yes, he was a student at University of Detroit
on the GI Bill.
on the GI Bill. Yes.
After he had gotten out of the Navy, six
Yes,
years
he
in
had
the
been in
Navy.
the United States Navy for 6 years. He joined the Navy in February of 1940 because he couldn't get a job. He graduated from high school. He graduated from high school about that time, and he couldn't get a job, and he was getting discouraged, so he joined the Navy, signed up for 3 years, but then the war started, and he was stuck for the duration of the war. And when I met him in June of 1947, he'd been out of the Navy for almost a year. I think almost a year. And all that time, I think he had decided he was going to go to University of Detroit, and he was serious about his studies, and he was in the electrical engineering program to become an engineer, and he already knew so much about it because when he was in the Navy, he was in charge of the electrical equipment on the ship. So it must have been an easy electrical engineering courses for him. He already knew the whole thing.
Oh.
And that was another thing about Joe. He always made sure he knew about everything he was getting involved in. And when I look back on it, I think he planned all that ahead of time because he never left things up to chance. He wasn't one of these people that was going to stick his neck out for something that he didn't know about. He had to be confident. And so we went together for, that was June of 1947. And then for 3 years we went together. And then one day we decided to get married, and so we went and got married at the judge's office. And
In Florida.
yeah. Well, I went to Philadelphia first, and he wondered why I was going to Philadelphia. I went to Philadelphia to visit my sister, and he didn't think that was a good place to get married. So he said, well, he was going to go to Florida, and would I meet him there? And so we went to Florida and got married.
You didn't travel to Florida with him?
No, I traveled from Philadelphia to Florida because I had gone to Philadelphia to see Camille. And that's when he called me, and he missed me. And he said, well, I don't want to stay in Michigan. He said, now that I've finished all the schoolwork, he said, I'm going to go to Florida where it's warm. I said, okay, I'll go with you. So that's how